Hey everyone, Mr. Kemple here once again. Today we're going to talk a little bit about still lifes, how to set one up, how to select objects, how to set up maybe a little station for yourself for painting, and then just the whole process of how to go about doing a still life, because it's a little different from what we've done so far, which has been using very flat color and thinking more about color harmonies and just color mixing. But now we want to actually look at objects, find a few that are interesting, assemble them in a pleasing way, and then try to realistically paint the still life that we're going to set up. All right. So the first step in that is going to be just selecting objects to draw or to paint. We have done a lot of still lifes this year, as you know, in class, where I am selecting the objects. So now it's going to be your turn to choose what you want to do. Some of you might have a hard time selecting objects or knowing what exactly to do. So I thought I would just take a minute and just show you examples of some things that might work. You just want to go around your house and find interesting objects. And think about color when you're selecting your objects. Now, you don't have to have tons of color in your still life. Like, don't overwhelm us with too many colorful things. But just, basically just in my kitchen here at home, these are all the things that I found that could potentially work. And you might have some things like this at your house to paint. So, anything. Like one thing, for example, is fruit or vegetables. If you have any fresh produce at home, great color from this, all right? You've got red apples, yellow bananas. There's this bag of peppers I found in our fridge. Look at all those great colors in there. All those analogous colors. All right, you could do it and then have the green of the stem there, all right, for a little variety. So like you could put a couple of peppers in your still life. Like kitchen implements, like I have all these colorful bowls in here. These rubber cupcake thingamajigs here, red and blue, some nice primary colors. Got a purple measuring cup here, all right, a nice secondary color. All right, I've got this weird bird thing that I guess holds sponges. You could put that in there. I've got some coloring, some colored cutting boards, this green knife, this yellow owl lip balm thing. I got the yellow lid off of a furniture polish can. All kinds of stuff here. This yellow glass bottle. So I could very quickly, just sitting here right now, like standing here, I could arrange, I could take a banana and put it with this red bird and, get this blue bowl in there and arrange a quick little still life, of just, I've got some, like a triadic now color scheme. There's my dog Oreo. Right? So right there, that's something I could do for a primary color scheme, or maybe take the banana out and put in the glass vase. I could do something with, I could take out these things and put in this orange. I think this is used to mash potatoes and stuff. So now I've got a nice blue and orange going on. I would kind of get rid of these things. Whoops. Sorry about that. So now I've got two complementary colors, blue and orange. Or I've got, this green pepper here that I could put in there with the apple. That's another example of some complementary colors. Okay. Other things you could use, if you have any plants, those are good. I have a bunch of just little toys laying around the house, different colors. All right. Wine bottles would be good. Like I said, peppers. I've got this thing of plastic Easter eggs. Look at all those great colors in there. That could be a great object to have in there. All right, so I bet around your house you could find a few really simple objects to make a still life with. All right, so that's going to be your first task, is just to find some objects. All right, I've got another bag of other like toys and things, different colors, some cool stuff in there. All right. Once you find, I would say no more than 3 to 5 small objects. They don't need to be big. Keep it kind of simple and small. The other thing you can do is even just take an object like a piece of fruit or a vegetable and slice it. Like if I were to just take this apple and cut it in half and then lay the two halves out, that would be a really interesting kind of play off the shapes and the composition. You could do something with that, or cut part of the pepper out and then use that in your composition. You just want to find some objects that have some interesting textures, interesting shapes, and something that, again, think about color harmonies. Like, think about the relationships of color between the objects. Okay, and again, like you could find, just with these objects I have here on the counter, you could come up with all kinds of different arrangements of different color harmonies, things like that. Okay. Once you have your objects assembled, anywhere 3 to 5 objects, you're going to want to create a little area for yourself, for your still life. I'm going to walk in here to the other room here, and I want to show you what I have set up. All right, so here is my little setup. These are the objects that I selected. I'm going with a complementary color scheme of primarily red and green. Now, let me turn off this overhead light here so I can see the light set up a little better. There we go. All right, now what I did was I took one of these boxes, I think that I got at, Sam's Club or one of those kind of places. I had it in my garage. It was one of these, and I basically just I took a knife and cut one of the sides off, and that gave me like a nice kind of little rig to set up so that I could hang some cloth on the back and just arrange a little still life inside of it. And what's nice about this is that it creates some nice cast shadows, and it also kind of keeps it from getting bumped or knocked over. I could also take this potentially and very gently move it to another area if I needed to. But you're going to want to find a place to set up where you're not going to be in anybody's way. So don't go plop down on the kitchen table if you can help it. Try to find some place where you can either leave your still life undisturbed for a few days, or have it in such a way like this, where if you have to move it, you can, and move it to another place. So that way, if you need to sit down and have dinner at the table or whatever, you can do that, and then move it back later. Okay. One other thing that I will say about working with fruit that you got to be careful with is fruit goes bad. You know, anything like produce, like vegetables, fruit, all that stuff I had in there, if I leave it out for days and days, it will start going bad and turning brown. And that will obviously affect the appearance of the object. So just keep that in mind. All right. So, that's why at school I use fake fruit. So that way it doesn't spoil. But anyway, okay. So once you get your objects, arrange them in an interesting way. So this is what I've come up with for my still life. All right. Now, it's true that there are some other colors in the still life, like especially these kind of gray, silvery colors, and maybe just a little bit of black in this guy here. But other than that, and maybe some like little yellow highlights, but the dominant colors are complementary colors, red and green. So that will work for my harmony. You can have little areas of other colors in your still life if you need to. Just make sure that the dominant colors are the ones in your harmony, and you'll be okay. All right. So I've got my objects selected, and I've arranged them in an interesting composition. What does that mean? An interesting composition means I have a hierarchy of objects, and I have a variety of scale. So there's some different size objects, big and small. I have some different type of surfaces in my still life. And I have some interesting negative space. So looking here, I've arranged it so that I've got some nice, interesting shapes going on in between the objects. All right, and I've got what's called a pyramid. A pyramid composition, which is very stable. Which is like you have like one thing at the top, and then your eye kind of gets led down through here, and then you kind of have a triangular kind of composition. Okay, so think about once you have the objects, try to think about the negative space between objects, think about how they're arranged, think about how you're leading the shapes and the edges can lead the viewer's eye throughout the composition. And if you guys did the reading that I gave you before break, some of those web links had some good advice talking about how to come up with good compositions for still lifes. So if you haven't read that yet, I would. Okay? So once you have the objects selected and you have arranged them, then the next step is going to be lighting. All right, now as you can see here, I've got a light set up where I have a studio light. That's my dominant light source. Okay, that is giving me like a nice directional light where you've got a really strong light source coming in from the left-hand side. All right, and that's giving a nice sense of like highlights on one side, shadows on the other. But I also have, scooted back a little bit, a lamp set up here. And I'm also next to the window. So during the day, I might not even have this lamp on. I might just open up the blinds and have the natural sunlight coming in through the window. All right, that's going to give me some nice natural light so that I can really see the colors really well in this still life. All right. So you want natural light if possible. So if you can be near a window, that's great. But just get some kind of little, like a desk lamp or a clip-on lamp like this. Or heck, you can even get like a reading light, like one of these clip-on reading lights like this. I could clip that to the, back of my little box here and have another light source that way if I wanted to. Okay. So you want to have a strong directional light coming from, either the left or the right. And then you want to have a softer secondary light off to the side. Because you don't want super drastic shadows on the dark side. Right? So this lamp over here is giving me some nice ambient light coming in on the side. But as you can see, the strongest light's coming from here, and I've got these nice cast shadows back here that kind of makes it a little dramatic. Okay? So, got my objects selected. I'm thinking about color harmonies in my objects. I'm thinking about interesting shapes. Also pick objects that you like. Like, I'm into this stuff. That's kind of why I chose these things, because they're going to be fun for me to paint. All right, I know like fruit and flowers isn't the most interesting thing to paint, but they're relatively easy for a beginner to do. All right, I wouldn't necessarily pick objects this complex, but the objects themselves are very simple, but some of the color that's going on in here is a little complex, and I'll get to that later. So don't feel like you have to do anything this elaborate. Okay. So now the next thing to talk about is preparation. Once you have this still life set up and you have the lighting set up, you want to do some thumbnail sketching. So here in my sketchbook, as you can see, I've just done little studies, little thumbnail sketches of different compositions. And I've arranged the objects in different ways and done little sketches, and I'm trying to decide, do I want a horizontal format, a vertical format? Okay? And I'm just playing around with, shading a little bit. I mean, these aren't really incredibly detailed. They don't need to be. But the reason why I'm doing this is because, number one, like I said, I'm choosing my view and figuring out how the composition is going to fit on my paper or my canvas. But I'm also getting comfortable drawing the objects, because the more comfortable I am drawing them, the more comfortable I'll be painting them. Okay? So it's good to do a series of thumbnails. And notice I'm not just doing one or two. I'm doing several small sketches. And they're not very fancy. Like, some of these are super simple. But I'm getting a sense of the negative space between and around the objects. I'm getting a sense of overlapping. I'm getting a sense of how the eye flows through the composition. Okay? So, once you have everything set up and selected and lit properly, you want to do some sketches. And I think that this is what I finally came up with as my solution. And that's the current incarnation, what you see here. Okay? And I decided on a vertical format. All right? So now that I have done my sketching, and I don't know, I may have taken, spend a couple of hours just doodling and sketching and familiarizing yourself with your objects. All right? And once you have gotten something that works, and see, it took me all these other drawings. I had to do all this other stuff before I could get to this. All right, so sometimes you don't get it on the first try. You got to do just trial and error, some experimentation. That's what the creative process is all about. Okay, so now I've already done this, but you will need to now. The next step is to prepare your surface. Now, you've got three options here. Okay. Number one, you can take a sheet of the drawing paper that we've been using, right? This drawing paper that we've been using all year long. And what I did was I took one sheet of this paper. Come on, hold on a second. and I cut it in half. So you take one of these sheets, cut it in half, and then I'll give you 2 of these. Right? So now you have 2, and these should be 9 by 12s. Now you have 2 of these to paint from. Okay? So that's one way to do it. I would probably tape these to a board or something, but you can use the paper. That's one way. Another way is to use cardboard. If you don't have paper, get a piece of cardboard. This is basically a board from an old sketch pad of mine that I just, took off the back. And what I did was I took some painter's tape. I measured out, I want to say this is a 10 by 15 rectangle. I taped off the edges and I primed the board with, there's something called gesso, which you can buy. But if you don't have gesso, just regular white acrylic paint will work. All right, and I basically primed the cardboard. If you don't prime it first, the color will just the paint will just kind of absorb into the cardboard and it won't look right. So you want to definitely prime it with white paint first, like this. All right, so if you have like an old cardboard box at home, like in your attic or your garage, you can cut one of the sides off of that. Or if you have any other kind of, like, here's another thing here where I've got like an old mailer box. I could, maybe unfold that. Let me see. Tear that off and use the inside to paint on. Okay, so that's another way. Is you can do paper, you can do cardboard. Just prime it first, like I said. Or finally, you can use a canvas panel. Now, before break, I gave everyone links to where you could order a canvas panel. They have them at Michael's as well. I know there are some Michael's stores that are open right now, and they have curbside delivery, so you could call up the store or order it online and then go, and they'll bring it out to you if you want a canvas panel. Or, like in my case, I just had a bunch of these laying around. Okay. But again, I gave you the links to that, so if you want to order one, you can order one. And it's just basically a piece of board, and it's got canvas wrapped around it. And the canvas, I don't know if you can tell, see how it's kind of got a little texture to it? That just kind of helps grab onto the paint. Okay. And it's just kind of a nice, when you're painting with a brush, it has a nice kind of resistance to it, and it helps when you're painting. It gives things a nice texture. So I recommend canvas or a canvas panel. They also have stretched canvases you can buy, but this works fine. Okay. But again, I gave you the link to that in the bulletin right before break. So if you want to paint on a canvas panel, I would order it as soon as possible. If you haven't already, you probably should have ordered it before break ended. Like, you should have ordered it at the beginning of break, so that way by the time it was over, it would be here. But again, Michael's, if you can find one that's open, they'll probably have them, and you can pay for it online, and then they'll bring it out to your car. You won't have to even go inside. Okay. So whether you're doing paper or cardboard or canvas, the next step is going to be to take your thumbnails and transfer them to your painting surface. So as you can see here, I've got my sketchbook, and here's my thumbnail. And then I basically took that and redrew it larger onto this canvas panel. So there we go. I don't know if you guys can see that. All right, so I just sketched out my composition onto my canvas. And it's not a super detailed drawing. It's just like a, a pencil sketch. Just a line, just to, block out the shapes and let me know where things are going to be on the painting. And again, I did it pretty big so that, I've got some open space so that objects, can breathe, but I didn't make it really tiny. It's taking up most of the room, which is what you want. So no awkward cropping or anything. All right. So now, once you have gotten to this stage and you've gotten your composition sketched out onto your painting surface, the next step is to actually start painting. And what you're going to want to do is first block everything out in flat color, which is called an underpainting. All right. So you'll just block everything out with very flat color. All right. So I'm going to be using, like I said, mainly reds, greens, and some gray. And I'm just going to block out the objects very flat. And then I'm going to go in and kind of work in small areas and add all kinds of, little variations and highlights and color and shadows and things like that, and try to make the objects look volumetric and look realistic. Okay. But that's going to be later. All right. So that's it for this first stage here, which is just to, number one, select your objects, decide on your composition and your arrangement, set up a little area where you can work, and then sketch out your thumbnails in your sketchbook. And then finally, once you have something you like, do all your sketches. Then once you come up with something you like, put it on your board or your paper or your canvas. And then on the next video, I'm going to show you how to just really quickly block everything out with color, and then we'll start actually painting proper. Okay? So that's it for this first video. Just do your best. Think about what color harmony you might want to use in your painting. Try to select objects that you think will be interesting to paint, that'll be fun to paint, and that have good color harmonies in them. And again, don't do a lot. Don't pick anywhere from like 3 to 5. Come up with some good lighting. Get some table lamps or some desk lamps or something. Come up with some nice lighting. Do your sketches. Sketch everything out. And then we will talk in the next video about the actual color part of the painting. All right. See you in a bit.